Tonight, breaking news, a major chain reaction. Crash leaves many injured, including children. Multiple accidents shutting down highways and toll roads across the region. A United Airlines flight makes a hard landing in powerful winds, one of its tires coming off during touchdown. Now a brutal cold wave is sweeping in, wind chills dropping below zero from Minnesota all the way to the northeast. Tonight, the situation is escalating in Minneapolis. 1,500 active duty American troops are now on standby, ready to be deployed. Demonstrators interrupted a church service where one of the pastors serves as an ICE official. The Justice Department has announced it will investigate these protesters. President Trump is sending a message to Norway after not receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. He's now linking this to his push for Greenland. Overseas, demonstrators are wearing red caps with a new message, "Make America Go Away." A judge and his wife have been shot at their home. We have updates on the judge's condition and a statement from his wife. Trains colliding overseas. At least 40 people are dead. Passengers were seen smashing through windows, dangling, desperately trying to escape. Actor Timothy Busfield is now accused of child sex assault. Tonight, his wife, actress Melissa Gilbert, has written a letter to the judge. We'll tell you what she's saying. News after the arrest of actor Kiefer Sutherland. Law enforcement sources tell Leaders Talk what he's accused of doing to an Uber driver. 3 separate shark attacks in just 24 hours. A man and a 12-year-old boy are in critical condition tonight. Another boy managed to escape a heartbreaking playoff loss for Bills fans. Tonight, the team has fired their head coach. Legendary designer Valentino has passed away. His trademark gowns were worn by Jackie Kennedy, Julia Roberts, and Princess Diana. And tonight, NOAA has issued an alert for a geomagnetic storm. What could this mean for millions of Americans, including your cell phones and the skies above? Good evening. Great to have you with us on this Monday night. We begin with the dangerous Arctic blast and storms triggering major accidents along highways across the country. A massive pileup of more than 100 vehicles. Images are coming in showing cars and several tractor trailers in a miles-long chain reaction crash on Interstate 196 just outside Grand Rapids, Michigan. Take a look at this. More than a dozen injuries reported, children among them. Multiple crashes along the Indiana toll road as well. Cars and trucks colliding and skidding off the highway. Drivers faced blinding whiteout conditions from the Dakotas east to Michigan. A United flight made a hard landing in strong winds. The front tire fell off. Passengers had to be deplaned right on the runway. Brutal cold is now sweeping in behind these storms, wind chills making it feel like temperatures below zero for millions. From Philadelphia to New York City to Boston, it will feel like single digits. Tonight, a harrowing scene in a blinding snowstorm. More than 100 vehicles smashed into each other in a massive chain reaction pileup in Michigan. Witnesses described semi after semi going into the ditch or hitting each other. The morning commute suddenly turned into a whiteout nightmare outside Grand Rapids. It happened so fast. A white wall appeared and vehicles just slammed into each other. Nearly a dozen people were injured, including children. Drivers rushed to help one another. Up to 40 tractor trailers were involved in this incident. Ambulances and school buses were lined up to transport the stranded. The brutal blast is now sweeping east, fueling new rounds of lake-effect snow. In Indiana, parts of the toll road were shut down after multiple crashes. Dangerous driving conditions were reported in Durham, North Carolina, with cars sliding out of control. Back-to-back weekend storms led to white-knuckle driving in St. Louis. One car was seen slamming into a guardrail. Snow and brutal cold stretched as far south as the Florida Panhandle. In Orlando, the front tire fell off a United flight heading to Chicago while landing in strong winds. 200 passengers were forced off onto the runway. Fortunately, no one was hurt. The dangerous conditions that led to the pileup in Michigan are expected to hammer the region all week long as it hits the northeast. Some areas have already seen more than 9 inches of snow. Those bands of lake-effect snow are still going and will continue through tomorrow morning. Lake Erie and Lake Ontario are also seeing significant snowfall. Some areas could see 4-inch-per-hour snowfall rates. All along the Great Lakes, cold air is pouring over the region. It will feel like 8 below in Pittsburgh, 0 in Albany. Single digits from Philadelphia to New York to Boston. And we don't rebound much in the afternoon. It's going to stay cold. Tomorrow will be the coldest day of this week. But get used to it because a serious Arctic invasion is coming again early next week. In the meantime, a tense scene in Minneapolis. 1,500 active duty troops are on standby to potentially be sent in by President Trump. Demonstrators interrupted a church service where one of the pastors is also an ICE agent. The Justice Department is now saying it will investigate the protesters. 1,500 active duty soldiers are on alert for possible deployment to Minnesota. The city of Minneapolis remains on edge after anti-ICE. Protesters disrupted a Sunday service. The Justice Department says it's now investigating. Protesters targeted the church because one of the pastors is the director of an IC field office. The Department of Homeland Security says 3,000 undocumented immigrants have been arrested in this crackdown in Minneapolis, including violent criminals. Agents stormed one home. The family of the man living there says they terrorized his young grandson, never asked for identification before pulling him out into the bitter cold and releasing him an hour later. DHS says the man lived with two sex offenders they're still looking for. His family disputes that, saying he only lives with relatives, none of whom are sex offenders. Tonight, there are allegations that some detained by ICE were denied access to legal counsel, including one protester, a U.S. citizen who was arrested after filming ICE officers outside of his house. He was detained for more than 8 hours and was not allowed to see an attorney, he says. 4 individuals tell Leaders Talk that they were not granted access to legal counsel despite a constitutional obligation. As protests continue, DHS denies blocking access to legal counsel for anyone in its custody and says that anyone they detain has access to full due process rights. There is news in President Trump's threat to take over Greenland. In an effort by Norway to defuse the situation, the president responded by reminding them that he was not given the Nobel Peace Prize, linking it to his threat to take over Greenland. Protesters are wearing red caps that say, "Make America Go Away." Tonight, President Trump is lashing out at NATO allies as he escalates his push for Greenland. He's saying that because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. This came after the Prime Minister of Norway texted Trump, pleading for de-escalation and proposing a phone call to talk it out. Trump responded, saying that considering Norway decided not to give him the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping, quote, 10 wars plus, he no longer feels the need to think of peace. Although it will always be predominant, he can now think of what is good and proper for the United States of America. Norway's prime minister told reporters that Trump is preoccupied with the Peace Prize. He explained many times that it's an award given by a Norwegian committee, not the government. NATO allies are rattled as Trump seems determined to own Greenland, which has been part of Denmark for more than 300 years. In Copenhagen, thousands took to the streets wearing Trump's signature red hats with messages saying, "Make America Go Away." 8 NATO countries, including France, Germany, and the UK, are moving forces to Greenland as a show of support. Over the weekend, Trump threatened new tariffs, 10% in February, 25% in June, until a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Tomorrow, President Trump heads to Europe for the World Economic Forum in Davos. There, he's supposed to unveil his Board of Peace. One leader invited to join is Russian leader Vladimir Putin. The board is intended to rebuild Gaza, but Trump seems to have larger ambitions that go far beyond that conflict. There's an urgent manhunt after a judge and his wife were found shot in their home in Lafayette, Indiana. We have news on the judge and a statement from his wife. Tonight, multiple agencies, including the FBI, are searching for who shot Steven Meyer and his wife Sunday afternoon. According to reports, there was a knock on the door. Someone said they had the family's dog. Then a shot came through the door. Police say shell casings were found at the scene but have said nothing about a motive or suspect. The mayor says every resource is being used. Meyer is stable and recovering. His wife said everyone has been so kind and compassionate. She thanked the community for their support and medical personnel for providing care. Meyer has been on the bench since 2015. Indiana's chief judge said any violence against a judge or a judge's family is completely unacceptable. All judges were asked whether they have received threats, and a majority said yes. They're now pushing for a state version of a federal law that restricts access to home addresses. Overseas, a catastrophic high-speed train collision in southern Spain. The death toll is rising. At least 40 people killed. Passengers were trapped, smashing through windows from the inside, dangling, trying to escape. A complex rescue operation is underway as crews comb through the mangled wreckage of 2 high-speed trains that collided. Several rail cars crashed into a ravine after the end of a train heading to Madrid, traveling 130 miles per hour, derailed and crossed into the path of another train going the opposite direction. At least 40 are dead, and officials fear the numbers will rise with many still missing. The mayor was one of the first on the scene. He expressed gratitude for the local people who helped in any way they could to get people off the trains in that horrific situation. Crews are examining the recently renovated track. Part of it may have ruptured, but it's not clear if that's a cause or consequence of the accident. Officials say the train that derailed was relatively new and passed a safety test just 4 days ago, just horrific now to Iran. The supreme leader is acknowledging that thousands of protesters were killed in 2 weeks of protests sweeping the country. Human rights groups say 4,000 were killed in the government crackdown. We're also told that hackers apparently took over state TV, airing pictures of the exiled crown prince and urging authorities not to point weapons at the people. Actor Timothy Busfield is accused of child sex assault. His wife, Melissa Gilbert, has written an emotional letter to the judge. Tonight, Melissa Gilbert is making an impassioned plea to the judge in this case, saying that Tim has the strongest moral compass of any human she's ever known. Busfield is behind bars in New Mexico with no bond. He's charged with sex crimes against a child actor he directed in a TV show. In a letter, Gilbert said she only wants this extraordinary man safe and whole. She wrote, "Please take care of my sweet husband." His wife's letter is among dozens expressing support for the Emmy-winning director and actor. He has denied all allegations. In a statement, he said he's going to confront these lies, calling them horrible, and that he's going to fight them. Busfield's lawyers say the child's parents have a history of fraud and dishonesty. They claim the allegations emerged after the child and a sibling were cut from the show in 2024, with the mother allegedly saying she would get revenge against Tim Busfield. His lawyers claim 2 independent investigations by the studio into complaints about Busfield and minor actors on the set lacked corroboration. They say there's virtually no time a minor could be alone with an adult who is neither their parent nor the studio teacher. Gilbert and others are expected to speak for him at a detention hearing to determine whether he will be released on bail. Tonight, new reporting after Kiefer Sutherland's arrest. Law enforcement sources say the Uber driver claimed that Sutherland punched him multiple times and tried to choke him. The driver did not need medical treatment. Sources say it appeared to officers on the scene that Sutherland was under the influence. The driver's dash camera may have captured the alleged encounter. No charges have been filed yet. Sutherland was arrested on suspicion of making criminal threats. 3 shark attacks in 24 hours in Sydney, Australia. On Sunday, a 12-year-old boy lost both of his legs in an attack in Sydney Harbor. Earlier today, a shark took a chunk out of a surfboard that an 11-year-old boy was riding. Hours later, a man in his 20s suffered shark bites to his legs. Officials have now closed Sydney's northern beaches in response to the index of other news tonight. We learned today that legendary designer Valentino has died. From the runway to the red carpet, Valentino crafted a world of luxury with his elegant gowns and styles, dresses worn by Jackie Kennedy, Julia Roberts, Princess Diana, just to name a few. His impact was far and wide. Valentino was 93. Millions of Americans could get a glimpse of the northern lights tonight. NOAA is now warning of a severe geomagnetic storm. It could also impact satellite navigation, radio frequencies, and power systems. The northern lights could be visible all the way south to Alabama, they say. Finally, tonight on this holiday, Americans marking this day and remembering the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. Tonight, across the country, acts of service in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., sorting donated foods in Augusta, Georgia, a food drive, students helping paint a new house for outreach, and in Washington, a park ranger and his salute. Dr. King often spoke of the gift of service. He said the time is always right to do the right thing. This is what he said in his final Sunday sermon at Washington National Cathedral. It may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. His warning about silence and indifference. However dark it is, however deep the angry feelings are, and however violent the explosions are, I can still sing, "We shall overcome." We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Dr. King in his own words tonight. I'm your host. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Have a good evening. Good night. End of tonight. Talk with Leaders Talk.